Hello and good morning, everyone. On behalf of Harbinger Group, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you joining us today for this session of Power Hour. I'm Janavi, VP of Strategy and Business Development, and it's my pleasure to be the co-host for this panel discussion. The topic of our Power Hour today is tips to protect cloud applications from emerging security threats. Considering that cybersecurity threats and attacks have been in the news pretty much every day these days, be it ransomware, DDoS attacks, data breaches, and even a lot of talk about AI deepfakes, I think this is a rather pertinent and timely discussion. So we have an amazing panel of industry experts here with us who'll be sharing valuable insights and tips that I'm sure will help us sort of navigate this ever-changing landscape of security threats and obviously help us protect our cloud applications. I know I, for one, can't wait to hear what our speakers have to share with us. But before we begin, here's just a quick housekeeping video.
Welcome to Harbinger's flagship interactive webinar, Power Hour. Select the right speaker for audio output. Test your speaker from audio settings. If necessary, join the webinar using your phone. Use the Q&A panel to share your questions. This webinar is being recorded. Attendees will receive the recording. Let's tune in.
Perfect. Just a quick note to add, my colleague Shraddha and I will be monitoring this chat and the Q&A. So I urge everyone to keep those questions and comments flowing, and we'll do our best to get to all of them at the end of this session, hoping for an interactive discussion here. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Srikanth Pattathil, who is the president and CTO of Harbinger Group, and he'll be leading the Power Hour today. Just a little background on Srikanth. Srikanth has been with Harbinger for nearly 25 years and has been absolutely pivotal in writing Harbinger's success story. Over the years, he has provided his leadership across various areas, including, but of course not limited to, software development, sales, as well as marketing. And his recent focus has been on helping some of our customers in the HR and learning domains help solve their product development challenges, as well as help them build their IP. And for our customers and our team, Srikanth continues to be a source of inspiration and a knowledge a go-to person for all knowledge technology that is related to technology. So with that, Srikanth, welcome, and over to you.
Hey, thanks, Janavi, for the kind words, and also for kind of giving us a quick overview of the topic about how to protect your applications in the cloud. So a warm welcome to all of you who have joined us today, and thank you for your time. It's going to be, as Janavi promised, a very interesting panel discussion, and we have some great industry experts joining us to share their views on this topic. Before I get started, I want to kind of narrate an incident that happened about 3 months back. One of our colleagues had just traveled to the US, and he was going to be there for a couple of weeks, or probably for some customer meetings and visits. So on our personal messaging app, I get a request that, I'm getting into a meeting. Can you help me with something really urgent? And it's got his name, but it's got a US number. So I thought probably, he's been in the US, he's got a new SIM card, which is for a few weeks. And that's from where he's trying to message. It has his photograph and all that. And I said, okay, what do you need? So he said, I need, why don't we jump on a call? I just need to give you a quick idea of what I need. So I said, okay, send me the link. So he said sent me the link, which was, one of the official apps that we used for communication. I joined the link, and it didn't join the app, but went to a web browser with the same URL and everything, and it opened up the video, and there he was trying to tell me something. I couldn't hear anything for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Probably I thought there was a bad connection, so I disconnected. And again, on the messaging app, it came back saying that, okay, maybe I need to rush into the meeting. Can you do one transaction for me? So I said, what? We don't do transactions like that. So, and when I responded that way, immediately the whole chat got deleted. But what amazed me was the timing of this. And also, secondly, there was an actual video of the person trying to talk for about 5 to 10 seconds that was done, which exactly looked like my colleague. So that prompted me to think, saying that the world is changing quite fast, and security is kind of very important, and we probably need to go back and think a lot about how do we protect ourselves from some of these things. So that was the background and maybe backstory for coming up with this topic. And my colleagues and panelists here have been kind enough to join me today to talk about this topic and share their views. And due course, I will introduce them. But let me just give you some more insights into the topic before we dive into our panel discussion. The digital transformation is happening everywhere, and cloud technologies and AI have only accelerated the journey, if you will. What that means for end users is that they're really stressed about the applications and the data that they're putting out in the cloud. Is it secure? Am I really being taken care of and my information is protected? As engineers who are building this software, I think it's imperative for us to make sure, we do everything possible to secure these applications and data so that our customers have the peace of mind. So today we will discuss through our panel discussion the threats and impact of security breaches, what kind of frameworks we can use to build more secure apps. What are kind of some of the emerging tools that are out there that we can apply for our defense strategies? And finally, talk about how can it become a culture so that it becomes an inherent process in our day-to-day engineering environment and culture. To set some more context, we collected some data and it shows that, the number of breaches that have been happening has increased multifold. So just in the last 4 months, 2024, there are already 30 billion records that have been breached. These are just among the 8,000 or 9,000 publicly disclosed incidents. If you add the non-publicly disclosed, which have not been disclosed, this number can probably be bigger. Therefore, security breaches are happening, as we know, round the clock, and everyone, including people like me and all of us, whether the apps that we're building or we're consuming, we are all being targeted. Another data point to look at is till 5, probably 10 years back, one thought that, hackers were only after, or security threats were only affecting the financial domain. The rest of us probably, we were okay. If you're building apps in other domains, nobody would take the effort to kind of, hack your code or software or try to do anything, breach the security, because there may not be enough in it for them. But that's not the case. If you look at the recent breaches, it has been happening in the public sector, healthcare, even governments have been targeted. So today, irrespective of what type of application you're building, for what industry you're building, I think, security risk is you are open to these threats. And you cannot say that, if it applies to me only if I'm in this specific industry or using these specific apps. It could happen to anybody. Therefore, the price of a breach could be too high for an organization if you ignore it. So overall, before we start in the discussion, I only wanted to emphasize this, is that we cannot deprioritize security over other goals. And today, the projection is that in 2024, the experts think that the global economy, the amount of breaches, if it continues at that same level, it'll be close to $9.5 trillion. So that's a huge amount of money that's at risk, or probably, in terms of the cost, if some of these breaches do become successful. On that note, let me welcome our panelists today. We have a great pool of experts, and I'm sure their views would be even more interesting from how to approach this whole domain and how to solve these problems. Starting with Sandeep Angra, Chief Information Technology Officer at Unify Aviation. Sandeep, if you can please introduce yourself and share your thoughts on why you think security is so important today.
Thank you so much, Shrikant, and really my privilege to join this session along with the other panelists. I am the CIO and CTO for Unify Aviation Services. We are the largest airport ground handling services in US. We operate from 3 continents, and we have roughly 44,000 employees in my organization, operating from roughly 250 airports, right? And I spent majority of my time, my career before taking this position in consulting, mainly with KPMG and PwC. And worked with almost 30 different, maybe more than 50 clients I had throughout my career, right? Major clients. And when I became the CIO, it was a different thought on security when I was not, and numerous reasons. At that time, my focus was let's deliver things, but I need to deliver on time as fast as possible. And if I need to compromise few things, when I had to go and get approval from the CISOs on different things, I thought, hey, this is adding to my schedule. But now when I moved to the CIO position, the entire shift, it changed overnight. Because now I'm interested with protecting the data for my employees, for my organization, for my creditors, and for my customers. And trust me, if one thing keeps me awake at night is the security, not the delivery of any enterprise application, period. I can do my work manually. I can ask my organization to do my work manually for the 2 months until something is not ready. But if there is an issue with the data, so with the security, if there is a breach, trust me, the impact on my employees, on my customer, on my company, on my brand is, you can't even measure it sometimes. Most of the time you can't. So this is paramount. This is the number 1 priority as a CIO I have in my organization. And you could imagine now, as the technology is changing, as the entire technology landscape is moving towards, hey, we are writing the codes towards more automation, use of AI to improve the productivity, more and more tools are coming. Here, the security threats are actually becoming and more proliferated as we go at a much faster rate than an enterprise can actually put anything in place to stop them. That's a fact, catching up. But as a CIO and CTO, at least I need to be vigilant about it. I need to know about this. I need to know what do I need to do to protect my enterprise. So this is very critical as part of my job. This is the number one threat, the number one thing I have in my mind 24/7. And this is what keeps me awake.
Thanks, Sandeep. I think no better person than you to say how it was different when you were an engineer or a business rat was a CIO CTO thing, and how security is suddenly the number one challenge. So very well put, and I think it gives overall the weight to this particular topic and why everyone should focus on it today. So thanks for that introduction and that thought. Uh, it's my pleasure now to welcome David O'Neill. David is the Chief Information and Security Officer at a global HR tech SaaS provider. David, you are the expert here, and look forward to your thoughts on this particular topic and what interests you most about this, and specifically a role of a CISO in an organization. What do your based on your experience, if you can share something and get us started.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I appreciate being asked to participate in this webinar and super interested in the topic. So I've been doing cybersecurity for about 20 plus years now. I've done everything from starting out as incident response, forensics. I've worked on the product side, the managed service side, the professional services side. I've worked on the private company side and on the public side. I've kind of have a pretty wide breadth of experience around different type of companies across different industries. And I'm currently an active CISO. And what does an active CISO do? What does that actually mean? And it's a good question. And when I maybe ask myself often, what is my role and what am I trying to accomplish? And I think one of the biggest things, and I think Sandeep put it really well when we talk about our job is to protect data. As a SaaS provider, I'm not just protecting our employee data from a corporate perspective, from a product perspective. I'm also protecting all of our customers' data as a data processor. We want to make sure that we're using the data right per our contractual obligations, that we are using and protecting that data from unauthorized access or from cybersecurity attacks. So really, as I kind of take a step back and look at that, it's really I'm acting as an expert within the business to our business leadership on emerging threats and the controls and risk mitigation that we can apply right to those threats that we're seeing within the business. And that's really my job, is to interpret what direction the business is going in, what their objectives are, where we have risks, and how we can mitigate those risks, and act as an advisor to that to that team in a way that helps them to actually understand, well, what is the reputational risk? What is the brand risk? Is it a risk to our customers? Is it a financial risk, a legal risk? So really just helping the business understand that risk.
Makes sense. I mean, David, thanks for the introduction. Glad that you could join us today. And I think there will be some very pertinent and interesting points that you can bring through the course of this discussion. Now, let me welcome my colleague, Sachin Survanshi, who's a software architect, and he's been architecting and building some of the most secure applications that we have delivered. So Sachin, maybe a quick introduction.
Yep, sure. Thank you, Shrikant. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening. So my name is Sachin Suryavanshi, having 14 years of experience in IT industry. So currently working as a software architect and responsible for designing highly scalable, available, and secure architectures. And I'm also having good experience in migrating on-premises applications to the Azure, and also having good experience in performance optimization. In addition, having good experience in implementing security processes or practices, including static application security testing, dynamic application security testing, software composition analysis, cloud security posture management, and security information and event management, and having some experience in SOC 2 audit also. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Sachin. I'm sure we'll come to the how part, and I think your help would be needed to explain as to
Sure.
how to address some of these problems that people may be facing. Sure. So let me move on quickly to our next section, which is about the first part about how to identify and mitigate security risks. Today, as we're building cloud applications, I think it can be compromised in not one way but many ways. And here are some of the common examples. Like somebody could do a brute force attack or a phishing attack. They could not choose to exploit the application, but they could choose to exploit you through the APIs that you are exposing. They could do a denial of service attack. So it's pretty complex, and none of these attacks are kind of big or small. Each one, can create havoc for the end customer, for your own employees and the organizations. And the impact, as we have heard panelists as well, and the data also shows, could be huge. So maybe let me pose that question to Sandeep first, saying that, okay, so, and from your engineering background, you have said that, I mean, people want to release applications faster and sooner. So what's the impact of releasing an unsecured application production, if you can throw some light on that?
So Shrikant, when an unsecured application is released to production, small, big, doesn't matter, the impact is pretty large. It could be, you have to really look into from 360 perspective, because a lot of time we are architect or we are the developer, it can be lost into that understanding the impact of the security of unsecured code release. The impact, when I look at the CIO perspective, when I wear that hat, I look at the impact. It's not just, okay, what will it take if such thing happens, breach happens because of this unsecured code. It's not just fixing that code and applying the patch. The damage is could be much bigger. And the time to rectify, yes, we can probably fix the code and apply the patch 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever the cycle is. How about the data which has already been stolen? How long the impact will be? The real impact from a cost and the timing perspective could be much more damaging, could be longer term than we actually can think about. The impact is going to be, if you look into the financial impact or the business impact, it's not only, the time it will take to fix the code, that's measurable, easy. Now your data, your personal data could be in the hands of the hackers or the bad people out in the market. They will continue to exploit that data, how much they can. There is an impact on your brand, company brand. Trust me, the shift I have seen in the last 2 years, I look into at least 20 contracts with different customers, multiple airline, the airport, the authorities and all that. The language we have in the contract now, when it comes to security, is much more stringent. Way too stringent, and more companies are adopting that. Now imagine that because of us, their data is compromised, because we exchange data with each other. We are actually responsible for protecting our customers' data. So what will be the impact not only on the brand and getting the future contract and future work? If there is a security breach in my company, I have to explain it to them. I have to let them know. And their trust in our ability to protect their data has been significantly compromised. There are legal issues. So it is very difficult for, if I have a security breach, I want to do the business with any reputable airline. And if they know that it has happened with us, they will not do the business with us. It's very difficult.
Yes.
And then the lost productivity. What if you are a manufacturing company and there is a breach there because of us? You're not able to operate your plant for a day or 2 or 3 days. Take an example of AT&T, what happened there. I don't want to name the companies. There was a company which actually produces soup, and they were down for 4 days because they had a defective code actually went into it, and it was exploited. They couldn't operate. So the impact is much larger than just fixing the code. The impact is on your employees, impact is financial impact is your reputation, impact is a legal perspective, impact on your customer, and doing the future business. You may not even be able to quantify it.
Yeah, I think all these aspects that you put together, I mean, the impact of a security breach is not just the impact at that point of time, but it stretches much, much beyond. So I think it's a very valid put across point in terms of when we are thinking of security, you just don't think about just the cost of fixing something. David, from your perspective, you built and delivered so many applications or advised so many people of how to do it. So what's your thought on the impact?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I think there's a point of clarification I want to jump back to, and that is, the idea that we're releasing insecure code. You can release secure code today that is not secure tomorrow, right? And that's a kind of something you have to wrap your head around. 0-day exploits, right? Things that we didn't know yesterday, insecure versions or dependencies within the library that a developer is using, an insecure version within the operating system that's supporting the web application. Like, all of these things are things that if you're not managing and monitoring, they can absolutely introduce in the same fashion vulnerable code that can lead to the business impact that was discussed, right? Which is protecting the data. I think that it's also worth noting that there's some other areas that when we consider what the impact could be, it's, yes, absolutely protecting customer data as a SaaS application is one of my top priorities, right? But there's also some other potential impacts, right? We have pivot points. Look at some of the other larger breaches in the last couple years where the attackers compromise those systems and then use them to jump to their customers. So not only, right, you have brand reputational impact to you, but now you're impacting your customers in a way where you have to tell them, sorry, we had an insecure system and now it's impacted you. We want to talk about financial impact. You are going to lose customers, and that brand reputation is really hard to measure in the immediate future. It takes a long time to recognize that full impact. And I'll just kind of add one other thing here that makes this even more complicated when we talk about, especially when we communicate with executive leadership, that's, well, this one vulnerability can't possibly have this huge financial risk, right? And it comes down to how much of a layered security approach do you have? How many controls do you have in place? But if you're a platform and this one thing allows you to move laterally within the entire environment, I mean, ransomware becomes a real opportunity for the attackers, or extortion, brand reputation, the fact that this happened. I mean, the list just goes on and on. All of these things have every potential from one vulnerability. So it's, as we look at, well, what is the actual risk and how do we communicate that? It gets kind of tricky, right? To be able to say we have to fix everything that we find, right? Versus, this one thing, and in my experience, the business assumes you're crying wolf, right? Because every vulnerability is going to lead to every single outcome. How is that possible? And there takes a lot of education that we have to provide to the business and understand, like, no, it absolutely can.
Perfect. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think you made an important adjustment to the question. It's secure today, but not tomorrow. So I think that's something that as engineers and developers and architects, we need to think about. Thank you for
David, this is a great point actually you brought, and I really wanted to, maybe Shrikant didn't want to pivot on something else, but David, in your experience, because you have real experience in writing the code probably itself, and at that level, what should the developers in the enterprise do that you may have written a good code today and it may not be protected tomorrow? What should they do to make sure that it's future proof?
Yeah, I would love to say that there's this easy button that you can click. There's this software you can go buy. The truth is if you're in a development team and you're developing an application, what kind of checks are we doing? Like, when we talk about this shift left mentality of going from, I'm doing a penetration test, which is after the fact, I'm in production, it's after the build, right? To how do I check for these things as part of the development life cycle, right? Am I starting with an architect review, right? When I get someone like Sachin, right, on the call, when we're talking about developing a new thing, is he involved in the process with the product team? Is he helping and guide them? And this is a very shift left, like at the very beginning, and then you get some threat modeling. But as an engineer, to answer the specific question, if you're an engineer, what can you do? If there are tools that your company offers, IDE plugins, use them, right? And know that while there are some false positives, I would say work with your security team. They want to make the process better. They want to make sure that you're fixing the right things. And if you're getting false positives, raise the issue to them. It could be that they don't know or understand or have the expertise from a dedicated engineer perspective. So really work with your security team, introduce the concept, have some dialogue. I'm sure that you're going to be able to find some common ground to say, like, these are the things that are most important for us, right? Versus things that we don't potentially have to scan. As a practical example, if I'm editing code that has anything to do with cryptography, like I'm storing passwords, I'm hashing things, like that is super important, right? Managing sessions versus things like I'm updating a CSS style sheet, right? Not so important. So we don't have to scan everything. We don't have to, be conscious of all the things, all the pieces of code, but we do want to make sure that we are getting that visibility, right? And it's using the tools.
Thanks, David, for answering that. And Sandeep, thanks for digging deeper. I think it was an important point. And I think my follow-up question was somewhat similar as to what could be some of the actionable tips if one runs into such kind of, and how do businesses protect themselves from emerging threats? So Sandeep, from a CIO's perspective, how do you think about these actionable tips, and how do you kind of engage with your team on this topic?
I think so, Shrikant, when it protecting business, right? It's not a one thing. It's not one silver bullet which you need to do. And I'll tell you one thing, whether me or I'm talking to a lot of other CIOs across the board, getting the full funding for your security is still a tall order. Trust me. When you are talking about securing your enterprise, investment in security, making sure you have the right team, making sure you have the right engineers, the right CISO team is set up. There are companies, a lot of companies do it. I'm not saying that. A lot of companies make it the first priority, but there are a lot of companies there where it is not an easy ask. Hey, I need to implement, I need $5 million next year to secure my environment. So what does that mean? As a CIO, it's very important for the CIOs to create the awareness within the organization, upward, left, right, and downward. It's a collective effort as an organization to secure your environment. When I say upward, that is where I need to educate the other leadership team how critical, how important this is. What are the threats? What are the emerging threats? How will we protect them? What do we need to do to protect them? And what is the investment required to protect them? When it is downward, that means a consistent and constant and continuous conversation and the dialogue, and to provide information to my employees. What do they need to do on day in, day out to protect the information? If you're talking about all these phishing attacks, whether impersonation, whether you talk about any threats, if your employees do not even know about it, how they are going to help you? Trust me, you can put any software in the world. I can bet, I can tell you, whether you talk about any technology, you will get the phishing emails. A lot of emails will come through and it will hit your inbox.
Yeah.
But the point is, at that time when it hits your inbox, what action your employees will take, that difference is going to be educating them and not educating them.
Perfect. Yeah.
Right?
Makes a lot of sense.
Then a lot of other things. That's one point. Education, 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 education. Trust your guts. If as a CIO, you know this is the threat, understand it, trust your guts, take the action. Right? And as an organization, make it your security needs to be at the front of your design, shift left, rather afterthought. Then when, make sure you always do the independent security assessment every year, weekly, monthly, or whatever the vulnerability testing. You need to do as an enterprise developer or an architect, solution architect, you need to do that on a constant basis, what you need to do. But having that outsider eye on checking your application infrastructure, independent security assessment, do it. Not only do it at the enterprise level, let them look into your enterprise too. Is there anything which we missed? Which is because those independent companies are a lot of time, they know when David talked about it may be good for yesterday, it may not be good for the future. Those people can actually bring that perspective to the table, right? And then other things you can look into your other things, advanced, threat detection solutions, but shift left. Make sure, go to the basics. Have the good security policies in place. Make sure there's a good governance there, and we follow. Don't think CISO is your enemy. CISO is your friend.
Yeah, David is a friend. We know that. So it's just that when he comes with his book of requirements, we should be positive about it rather than think that he's trying to kill the business. And
exactly, yeah. That's the point.
I think that's a great point. And thanks for sharing that. I think the education part, like your top, bottom, everywhere on a continuous basis was a great point. And I think it's good that we should, as an organization, focus on that continuously. And I think based on your advice, people will start doing that as well when it comes to security. So thanks for sharing that perspective, Sandeep. David, let me just jump now to Sachin first. I know you've answered some parts of it, and then we talked about the shift left and all of that. So we've heard about these concepts like shift left, shift everywhere. So Sachin, I know you've done this in the projects, and if you can share some thoughts on, what are some of the things that today applications do when it comes to security, and how do software architects approach it? So your thoughts?
Yep. So as you can see in the slide, shift everywhere, right? So basically here we can talk about shift left plus DevSecOps, right? So during the requirement, for example, if you get the requirement for login page, right? And you know that there are some common attacks like brute force attack, right? So the security should not be like afterthought. So during the requirement itself, if you start gathering that kind of information, hey, can we implement like MFA? Can we have like rate limiting, right? So how we can avoid those brute force attacks? So that should be part of your requirement itself. And during the architecture and design, you can have that kind of mechanism in place so that you will not face those issues on the production directly. And so this is just about the requirement and architecture designing. So here you should consider all the security practices. And when you hand over those designs to the development team, so now they are going to write the actual code, right? So they should follow the secure coding guidelines. They should have their own checklist. In addition, you know that the person cannot find out all the vulnerabilities. So you should use some tools. So you can think about like software composition analysis. So it's not just about your source code, but if you are using third-party libraries, open source libraries, so you have to find out vulnerabilities in those third-party libraries also. So you can use some software composition analysis tools like Veracode, for example, okay, or White Source. So that tool is really important. And in case of your source code, you should be using like static application security testing tool. So you can think about like, for example, SonarQube or Veracode again. So these tools will definitely help you to find out the vulnerabilities in your source code itself. On top of that, you should have the quality gate concept. So if anyone is violating any rule, you should reject the build itself. You should not deploy anything directly on staging environment also. So you should have that strict build rejection policy. Once you are ready with the code and once you deploy that code on, for example, staging or UAT or non-prod environment, right? So you can use some dynamic application security testing tools. So here you the third-party softwares can help you like Qualys, for example, or again, I would say that Veracode. So basically, it will execute your application and try to find out vulnerabilities in your application itself through the HTTP URLs, right? So that is really important. On top of that, you can use some penetration testing tools like Burp Suite or Cobalt. So penetration testing, I would say that it's not like automated. It's like you need that kind of expertise in your team, right? So that they can use some third-party tools to find out the vulnerabilities in your software. And the cloud security posture management release and deployment section, that is really important. So if you are deploying your application in cloud, right? So there are some chances if that person do not have good experience in creating or deploying the resources, then there are some chances you might misconfigure something in cloud, right? So it's not just about application security, but it's about your infrastructure security, how you are creating the resources, how you're maintaining the security of those services. So that configuration is really important. So you can use a cloud security posture management CSPM tools for that. So for example, you can use like Wiz for that, or you can use like Azure Defender, for example, in cloud. So that is also really important. And once you are ready with the production deployment, then if there are hundreds of applications, right? So how you can find out the vulnerabilities? So if someone is trying to attack your application, for example, it's a DDoS attack, brute force attack, or something else, right? So you need really strong log monitoring tools there, or you need like security information and event management. So this is a combination of like information management and event management tool. So you can use some third-party software for that. You can send all the logs, the application infrastructure logs to that service, and it can aggregate those logs. It can use machine learning AI to find out the vulnerabilities and create the high fidelity alerts so that you can take immediate action. So one thing is about writing secure code, but even you know that nothing is secure on internet, right? So there are some chances something might go wrong. You need some proactive plan for that. So you need log monitoring and plan to remediate those vulnerabilities. So this is how I think you can implement this type of model everywhere to protect your applications.
Thanks, Sachin, for walking us through quite detail and giving examples of some of the tools and the applications and the software that could be used. I'm sure for attendees, that will be a valid thing to go back and check how they can embed this in various parts of their development and engineering
Yeah,
process. So thank you
SDLC.
for,
Yep.
for putting that together and the slide as well. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
You're doing that for us. So moving on to some more interesting parts, this is talking about future in terms of, in terms of new threats coming our way. And towards the early part of my discussion, I kind of introduced how I faced a deepfake attack myself. But I think it'll be interesting to hear our panelists' views on, this is kind of the talk of the town, probably, how do you protect your apps and infrastructure from the risks of deepfakes? Sandeep, you want to share any views on that?
Yeah, this is actually to be honest, is the threat is there. It is real. And as a CIO, I have seen it. I've seen it in my organization. This is happening. So when we are talking about deepfakes, this is actually an huge problem, not only for the enterprise, business enterprise, but society as a large. Right? This issue is much bigger than, is beyond security now.
Yeah.
And it's impacting the business. A lot of time now you see these phishing emails, the other things, they are actually trying to talk to you through phones. They're actually extracting, they're stealing your data. They're impersonating either via video or via text or via email. They're using the deepfakes to actually take advantage of your security vulnerabilities. And their idea there is to impact business, impact individuals, and impact the society as a large. Are there things, for example, they are becoming much more intelligent to actually use. For example, if you have a identification, you have authentication, and right now maybe in security you are using your they want to look at the person and validate your identity. But deepfakes can actually break that, your security mechanism, what you can have in place. It can actually breach that. And it is happening. The worst part is it is happening, and we have experiences in these areas.
Thanks. Sorry, Sandeep. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. So the thing is, we need to protect, organization need to be ready for that. I'll be quick on that because we have 11 minutes left there. But I think the digital certification, don't use individual user, use a digital certificate to actually identify your any application, whatever we are using.
Yeah.
Go towards that. Go towards advanced threat detection solutions. There are solutions out there which are emerging right now, which an enterprise can use to protect yourself from deepfakes.
Cool. Thanks, Sandeep. And I think those are good tips of how to kind of prevent yourself. And as organizations, you need to be aware of this emerging threat where everybody is being targeted. And it's one thing that could be very hard to circumvent. David, your views on the deepfakes thing from a CISO's perspective?
Yeah, so this is one of those things where you're a company, right? And then you have threat actor over here, usually contacts user over here, which is in some instances that they're doing it on their personal phone, which is completely outside of a CISO's control, right? And we get asked every day, hey, should we stop that, right? And that can be a really hard conversation. We can't stop the internet, right? So how do we effectively protect against these? And I think there's a couple things that we need to do. We need to really understand the threat and do some type of threat modeling or analysis to say, like, what are the threats that we can actually take some action against? And one area that we've been fairly successful at establishing a program around is protecting our executives. There are lots of tools out there for this, where you can protect executives and protect your brand, right? And do data scrubbing, right? So they use some of these deepfakes. They're using this public information to create these profiles and generate the connection on who knows what and how things are communicated. So getting that information and making it harder won't stop them, but it'll increase the complexity enough that they might go for somebody easier, right? And that's kind of, in this instance, what I think the risk mitigation is that we're trying to make it hard enough that they go and try it on somebody else. I do think, and Sandeep, I have a question for you, and that is, as we look at some of these threats that are very hard to quantify, right? Because we just learned this year that there are new threats that we did not know about, which has kind of always been the way that security has handled these. We're very reactive, right, to the threats that we see. Sandeep, my question is as a CIO, right, and a CTO, from a CISO's perspective, what are your recommendations, right, when we talk about establishing trust between our organizations and building a rapport and able for me to say, like, this is a real threat? What is it that you need, and how do you create the business context, right, to be able to help the CISO tell the business, like, these are real threats and things that we're seeing? What is your strategy for communicating to the business the need to protect against some of these emerging threats?
I think number one, CIO and CISO, they are together. If we need to fight any security issues, they need to be working together. They are part of one team. We should never think that as two different teams. And that's one thing what I learned. The CISO, when they create their, if you look into CISO, they are the one who are going to create all the policies. What do we need to do? How do we do the risk assessment? Their participation, whether how do we select a vendor? What do we need to do? How do we assess a vendor from security side? What software we bring it to the table? How do we assess that from a security side? CIO and CISO need to work together to make sure those policies are written, they are enforced. How do we work on them? Because so that the CIO and CISO go in one collective, right, voice to the business when we tell them what are the threats, why they are the threats. If for example, business will come here, I need this software, I have selected this software, I want you to implement it tomorrow. If CIO is going to go and tell business, yeah, I can do it, and then when CIO is going to start implementing this, and then where they're going to reach out to the CISO, hey, we are implementing this, and CISO, oh, you didn't tell me. Nobody told me to implement this. Then they will start asking those difficult questions, which are important questions. At that time, CIO will say, oh, I didn't do it. I didn't, there's no explanation. Now we are not on the same page. And then business is going to hear, okay, hey guys, you are not even on the same page here. What's going on? And they will blame CISO, okay, he's the one who is actually delaying my delivery. And CIO is saying, yes, he is. I told you I'll deliver. The point is CIO and CISO need to be on the same page when we create any policies, when we are talking about NIST framework, when we are talking about ISO 27001, CISO and CIO need to make sure they review, create, and make those policies together so that they are always on the same page when we are conveying these messages to the business. That's one thing I have learned, actually, David, hard way.
Thanks, David, for that question, and thanks, Sandeep, for sharing that perspective. I think each question is like having many sub questions, and I think it's lovely to see the interaction. I think in the interest of time, I think I have one more question that I will probably pose now, and I'll pose it to David. And I think we've been talking about this culture. So, how do you maintain resilience of your software products on an ongoing basis? And I think you alluded to that. It's not about security today, but something in future. But from a culture perspective, how do you approach security, and how do you imbibe it in teams?
Yeah, no, I appreciate this question. It's a hard thing to get right, and I think that we often, especially from an engineering perspective, right? Those of us that have grown up technical, we want to solve it like an engineer with a tool or by doing this one thing. And the truth is, and I talked a little bit about it earlier, it's establishing communication, right? I really think that developers and security teams, if they can come together and find common ground, they're going to be able to build resiliency based on the way that security builds requirements and the way the engineers actually engineer the solution. Without that communication, it can become very much a game of, I pass over to the engineer a list of, here's all the vulnerabilities, and they spend all their time going, well, maybe that's a false positive, but I don't understand the risk on that one. And there could be, I don't want to say resentment, but there could be a lack of understanding that leads to maybe if we had communicated, we could actually come up with a better control. I think not all risks or not all vulnerabilities potentially have to be prioritized the same and have the same fix. Right. We talked about on Sachin's, on his diagram, he showed that there are different tools for identifying. There's also different tools for protecting, right? One of the tools that we have is remediation. There are web application firewalls, right? A very known pattern for attacks is cross-site scripting, right? If you can get a web application firewall to block all cross-site scripting, what do you do from a vulnerability perspective, right? And what I would recommend is you still fix it, right? You just don't have to do it with the same priority that you would do, right? If you're monitoring things appropriately. So I think developing a good relationship with engineers, with the product designers is really the key to building resiliency, because in my experience, they understand that vulnerabilities can have risk, but what they don't understand is the threat model piece of it and why something is a specific risk. And when you explain that to developers once, like they got it, like they're smart people, they got it. Explain it once, they're going to get it. And as you help them understand those the threats to what they're building, they're going to get better, and it's going to provide you an overall more resilient application in the long run.
Thanks, David, for sharing that. How do you culturally work with developers and leadership as well? We discussed in the past. So thank you. I think those are great points. I know we are pressed on time. Otherwise, I would have had the opportunity to ask a few more questions, and I'm sure there could be a phase 2 of this at some point of time. But very quickly, what we kind of talked today was it's a design concept from when it comes to security, and cannot be applied towards the end. It has to shift everywhere or shift left, if you will, and make sure that your entire organization is on board. The leadership is on board in terms of making sure you build secure and deliver secure apps and therefore secure data. There are a lot of tools and technologies that are available and emerging as well that one can use to protect their applications and data. And I'm sure Sachin alluded to them, David, you alluded to them, Sandeep, you did as well. And I think there could be a completely separate discussion on all these tools. And overall, what I got based on what you all discussed is and shared is overall it's a culture thing, and we should not take security lightly. It's top priority probably from a CIO, CTO, CISO perspective, but it should not only be limited to these individuals, but it should be the entire organization that is behind it, so that only then And the education part is also very important for organizations. So all of those were great points, and I think we kind of, I think there were a lot of great suggestions and ideas here. So thank you very much for sharing that. I really am thankful for you to participate in this discussion. I would love to open it for questions, but just before that, very quickly about Harbinger. We are a product engineering and content engineering services company. We help customers transform the way people work and learn. And I think, if you need to know more about us, please visit our website at www.harbinger.com. So, I know we'll stay here for a couple of more minutes. In case there are any questions, we can take it up. But I think we are over the hour, so I think there was a lot of discussions here itself, and it was good to see. I've seen first time panelists having questions for each other, so that was kind of wonderful. It made my job easier. Sandeep and David, I think, good fun, and Sachin as well. I mean, your inputs to how to do and how to solve problems, specifically security in a simple way that you put together. That was great.
Thank you, Shrikant. Thank you.
Thank you for a great discussion, Sandeep, David, Sachin, and Shrikant. I learned a lot, took away. There are a few questions. I don't know if, but we are over time. Maybe we can take one or two, but we'll be sure to answer them in our follow-up email that we send out. Maybe I'll just take a couple of them, and if you can briefly answer, that'll be great. One question is, if I'm building apps on the cloud, shouldn't the cloud providers be responsible, or are they responsible for the security? That's my favorite, so I picked that first.
So maybe, I can take that question. So technically, I would say that no, because when you configure something in Azure or in AWS, as I mentioned earlier, there might be some misconfiguration issues. There are some services which can have inbuilt protection. So for example, if you're using a layer 7 load balancer like front door in Azure, so you can have like DDoS protection inbuilt supported. But if you're using traffic manager, then there is no DDoS protection support or no web application firewall support. So it totally depends on what kind of service you are using. So for example, if you're using Azure SQL, like PaaS service, Azure SQL Elastic Pool, you have to enable Defender on that service to find out the vulnerability. So, and you have to pay extra amount for that. So in cloud, the basic services are straightforward, but to secure those services, you have to pay extra amount and you need additional configurations for that. Even for the virtual machine, I can give a lot of example, but it's not inbuilt. Even for the Defender also, you have to pay. Even for the CSPM, you have to pay the extra amount for that. Yes, David.
Thank you. Thanks, Sachin. And I see there are a few more questions that have been answered already in the chat. There's one about how to handle fileless malware. If there's a quick answer to that, otherwise we'll stop this for now and being respectful of Sandeep's and David's time. But if any of you want to just quickly chime in on that about how to handle fileless malware, that'll be great. Otherwise, we can take that offline.
David, you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take that. And that's a very hard thing to do. I think there's no one answer. You're gonna, it's keeping your software up to date. It's, ensuring that you're limiting what services are running on the host system, understanding the architecture of how it would potentially get onto it. Like, are you scanning it as it comes in? How are you storing it? How is it executed? Is it externally accessible? Like, there's a lot of considerations that you have to look at when just dealing with files that are being uploaded. And then if they get uploaded, do they have this potential to run? And then if they do run, right, how are they potentially work from a fileless perspective working? If you do get to that point, right, are you scanning memory? Are you segregating memory? There are some things that you can do there. I think it really just depends. Like, as a security professional, right, I always want what's most secure. as a business leader, like there is a line that we have to say, like, when does the level of effort outweigh the risk? And that's not something I can answer easily. It's something that you have to look at per situation.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. Thank you, David. And I think in interest of time, we will answer all the questions in our follow-up email, but I want to take this opportunity. So this brings us to the end of our yet another successful and amazing Power Hour. I want to thank all our panelists, Sandeep, David, Sachin, and also Srikanth for all the invaluable information you've shared. I was thinking sitting there that each question could itself be a webinar topic. So thank you all. I took away some great thoughts. With me, I'm taking away, that security cannot be an afterthought. What is secure today will not be secure tomorrow. So I think that's a lot of food for thought for all of us. So thank you once again. And last but not least, I want to thank all of you who've taken the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And we hope to see you on the next Power Hour. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.